Breaking news on Locked On Knicks. Julius Randle is out for the rest of the season. We'll tell you what it means for this year's Knicks and beyond right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, because we are now available on all platforms. So if you haven't already, please check us out each and every day on YouTube. If you're watching right now, you're certainly watching on YouTube. And be sure to subscribe and hit that notifications bell to ensure you never miss an episode, and leave a 5-star review. Helps more people find the podcast. And if you give us 5 stars, I give you permission to write whatever funny thing you want to say about Alex or I in the comments. And you can also check us out on your favorite podcast platform of choice. Just be sure to hit that auto download function to ensure you never miss an episode there when you're on the go. I'm Gavin Schall, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. As you can hear, battling a little bit of a cold right now, and I've been covering the NBA for 10 years, including some time as a credentialed media member covering the Phoenix Suns. Some breaking bad news for the New York Knicks. No way to sugarcoat it. Adrian Wojnarowski had it first for ESPN. Julius Randle electing to undergo season-ending shoulder injury after his 2 months of rehab attempts that he had been furiously attacking have ultimately proven to be futile, because after meeting with 2 specialists, it was determined that it would ultimately not be safe for him to come back this year, and that he would be risking permanent damage to his shoulder. Ian Begley had some of SNY, had some additional information. Julius, of course, desperately wanted to come back. All we've been hearing for weeks and weeks and weeks was his incredible pain tolerance. It's easy to remember just a year ago, he came back from an ankle injury that specialists and doctors told him he was going to need surgery on, and he shouldn't be playing through. He played through that for the Knicks. And about a few weeks ago, he hit a point where he'd done everything necessary. All he was waiting on was for the shoulder to be cleared for contact. And after seeing multiple specialists, the procedure, and this is directly from Begley, the procedure became an increasing inevitability. This is from Wojnarowski. After recent visits to specialists who warned of further injury and possible permanent damage to the shoulder if he returned to play before a surgical procedure. Julius is reportedly devastated, understandably, recognizing that this is something I went over on yesterday's pod, but that the Knicks were in the mix for one of the best teams in basketball when he was on the floor. Their plus 15.8 net rating in the month of January is tied with the Celtics in March for the best net rating that any team in the NBA has posted this year. So this team had an extraordinarily high ceiling with Randle, Anunoby, and the rest of the core on the floor, and that is without Mitchell Robinson, who is obviously now back. I think this team's trajectory, if Randle doesn't get hurt, I'm going to say even with the caveat of Anunoby still getting hurt, was pretty clear. They would have been the 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference. The worst case was probably that they would have been the 3 seed. They're still, despite everything, somehow only a game back of the 3 seed in the East. And probably having a pretty decent shot at the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. I should say of facing the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think they would have had a super great shot at ultimately winning that series, but I think they matched up really well with the Bucks. And people outside of New York and outside of maybe the NBA minds that follow this league the closest would scoff at that a little and say, all right, come on, you guys weren't going to beat Giannis, you weren't going to beat Dame, you weren't going to beat Chris Middleton, you weren't going to beat Brook Lopez. I think this team definitely could have. And the Knicks over that month hit a level we have not seen the Bucks hit this year. Granted, the Bucks have a recent NBA title. They have a guy who can stake a claim any given playoff run as the best player on planet Earth. The Knicks did not have those things. What they did have was maybe the deepest team in the NBA, and maybe this side of Boston and possibly Denver, the league's best lineup and the league's best 5-man unit. So it's incredibly painful for this to happen to the Knicks for the second straight year, because I don't know if people give the Knicks enough credit for what they did in last year's playoffs, given that they didn't have Emmanuel Quickley, given that Julius Randle was playing through a severe ankle issue and wasn't anywhere close to 100%. And what's even more disappointing is this is yet another postseason where the Knicks will not get an assessment of Julius Randle. And that really complicates things for this front office and how they're going to move forward, that we're looking to make their all-in move this summer or early next season, right? All those picks, 11 first-round picks in the next 7 years, and a desire to use them to go bring in a co-alpha to Jalen Brunson. And Julius Randle fans, and which I count myself as one of, could fairly argue, hey, like, we have a dude right here who made 3 straight All-Star teams, and if he hadn't gotten hurt this year, likely would have made his 3 All-Star teams in 4 seasons. And if he hadn't gotten hurt, likely would have made his 3rd All-NBA in 4 seasons this year. We have our co-alpha. And what sucks is those people won't get a chance to be proven right or wrong. And Julius, who had, after an extraordinary 2020-21 season, a horrific playoffs, and then last year, because he was hurt, had a horrific playoffs, we're left with a situation where, like, this was going to be the year he could prove himself. And he's a guy who spent the last few off seasons working extraordinarily hard to be able to prove himself. And for my money, was playing the best basketball of his Knicks career this year, despite the fact that he went from one of the league's best volume 3-point shooters last year. Like, there was a point last season where he was second behind Steph Curry in 3-pointers made over like a 3-month stretch or something. Like, it was extraordinary the way he shot the ball last year. That went away this year. Like, he was 30% from 3 this season, and yet he took his inside game to another level and was getting to his spot better than he had at any point throughout his career. And because of that, was putting up a super efficient 24 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, the best passing season of his career at 5 assists per game, and was just making consistently better decisions, consistently quicker decisions. Was that perfect? No. Is that ever going to be perfect with him? Probably not. But the combination of shot selection and his improved playmaking and decision-making and ability to proactively manipulate a defense that's been there since that 2021 season, but I think was in the midst of peaking when he got hurt. That is killer for this team. And it was also his first opportunity to play with 3 legit spacers around him consistently for the first time in his career, which dramatically affected his ability to read the floor in a positive way. And we only got 14 games of him and Anunoby. The Knicks went 12-2, and again, played like the best team in basketball for that stretch, as an ambulance rightfully rings outside of my house. It's hard to come up with the words for the disappointment that we're not going to get to see that version of Julius Randle. And he could have answered some questions to the Knicks one way or another. Like, if he had come out this postseason and his regular season play translated 1-to-1, and the Knicks, I don't know, let's just say they beat the Pacers in the first round, they beat the Bucks in 7 in the second round, and they took the Celtics to 6 in the conference finals. Maybe the Knicks go into the summer and they say, hey, we are really close. We're going to use some of these picks, not all of these picks, to make a move on the margins. And we are going to save our war chest to make an additional upgrade, or when Julius is a little bit older in 2 or 3 years, to then turn him into a younger star. But for now, we're going to make a run with this group. And because they don't have that information, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but I think the Knicks are now in a situation, because Julius won't play in the playoffs and they won't know, can this guy actually execute in the playoffs at a similar or greater level than he does in the regular season? Like, we might have to move off him now, or it could swing the other way where it's, hey, we have to wait a little bit longer because we actually have to give this team a real chance and see what it looks like. And maybe we have to pass up on going and getting a Paul George. Maybe Well, I don't think they pass up on getting on Joel Embiid if he's available, like almost regardless of what Julius did, unless the Knicks had gone and won a championship this year. But that's something that they have to think about now. Also, what is Julius's value without being able to prove what he could do in the playoffs? What is his value turning 30 and coming off shoulder surgery that will hopefully have him ready to go day one of next year? It sucks. And maybe where I should have led all of this is like, it just sucks on a human level for a guy who we've had as Knicks fans, I'm going to say a fraught seesaw relationship with in Julius Randle, right? Like we've had some incredible highs. Like what he did for this team in 2021 was nothing short of extraordinary. And he was a savior that the Knicks haven't had since Carmelo Anthony in 12-13. And in terms of like just single-handedly dragging a team, very few guys in Knicks history have had a season like that 2021 season. Like that was special. And I think having the benefit of hindsight and looking back on that year and seeing like, all right, outside of Mitch and RJ to some extent, the Knicks did not really have a lot of keepers on that team. You go back and look at how far they got in the regular season, getting a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. I mean, product of a COVID year or not, like the way he shot the ball, that's insane. Like it is crazy to look back on that year and see what Julius Randle did. Obviously, the playoffs put a major damper on it, but that was special in a time where a lot of Knicks fans needed that. And whatever you want to say about the guy, and yes, there have been moments where he's been selfish. There are moments where he's been erratic on the court. There are certainly moments where he's been erratic off the court. But he's fought for this team. He's fought for this season. There are very few people in the history of this organization that goes back 75 years or so now that have put their body on the line like Julius Randle has put his body on the line for the Knicks. There are very few players as talented as Julius Randle, skilled as Julius Randle, who have poured as much into their games as Julius Randle to have worn a Knicks jersey. So just from a human perspective, this blows, and I hope everyone's sending Julius their best wishes, but you can imagine the pain of first having that injury that was just a fluke, right? It had nothing to do with his body giving out, with lack of preparation on his part. That was maybe slightly dirty play from Jaime Jaquez, and Julius just landed badly, and all the work that he put into building up like an Adonis-esque figure kind of betrayed him, where all that weight landed right on the shoulder, right on that right shoulder. And that was it. As a one moment, this dream season for the Knicks, maybe it wasn't crushed because this team is still really good, and we'll talk about it, can still make somewhat of a run, but certainly the apex of what it could be, which was an outside shot at the NBA Finals for the first time in 25 years, that's gone, and that is brutal. We are going to talk more about what the Knicks can be. We're going to probably send more well wishes to Julius in just a sec over here on Locked On Knicks. But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination from sports to live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Seriously, there is nowhere else I would rather watch sports and my sports program, including Locked On. We'll tell you about that in just a sec. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV, whether it's the opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament. You're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. So check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFire TV. We also want to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Our good friends at FanDuel. It is the place to go this college basketball season. The sports calendar is loaded, and FanDuel's making it even more exciting to get in on the action, because right now new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet the 20, MLB, NBA, NHL, and so much more. This might not surprise you. I don't care what the line is. I am taking the UConn Huskies to roll the rest of the way in the men's Final Four. I haven't seen this dominant of an NCAA team in quite some time. So visit FanDuel.com/lockdown and make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. All right, what up, guys? We are back on Locked On Knicks, talking through the Julius Randle injury. Once again, just incredibly devastated for him on a personal level. And you can only imagine what it's like to have probably just gone through the physical pain. This guy's gone through the last 2 months doing everything possible to get back on the court, and then to find out that, you maybe should have just gotten surgery the whole time. It's brutal. It sucks. Our best wishes are with Julius and his family. And the team. Like, it's like this team that has just fought in a way that, I mean, you look at it's a credit to Tom Thibodeau first and foremost, right? Because I'm trying to think back in my fandom that started in about 2003. Like have I seen another Knicks team like this one? And the only ones I can think of are last year and 2021. And last year was even another level in 2021. This year is even a step above last year, with Josh Hart, with Dante DiVincenzo fully incorporated, with Isaiah Hartenstein playing the best he's played the entirety of his career. I mean, what Deuce McBride has done the last 7 games or so, playing more minutes over a 7-game stretch than anyone has in the NBA this season. Like, it's a team full of warriors, a team full of killers that I think mentally is ready to go compete for an NBA championship. Whether they had the horses, even with Anunoby, even with Randle, open question, right? Like, they're certainly not in the same stratosphere as the Celtics from a talent perspective. They're probably not in the same stratosphere as about, 6, 7, or 8 teams in the league from a pure talent perspective. They make up for it in the fact that they're killers, and they bring a consistency to how they play every single night. Until the loss to the Spurs, I mean, they hadn't had a quote unquote bad loss for an entire season. I think the stat from Jonathan Macri, teams with under 30 wins going into that Spurs game, the Knicks were 21-0 this year. And that just, it just tells you that they don't take anyone lightly. They bring it every single night. And it gives you an idea of what a pacemaker someone like Jalen Brunson is, in terms of his ability to set the tone and just set a baseline of excellence. But honestly, like, Julius Randle was right there with him early in the season in terms of setting that standard. And after just a disastrous first 5 games, where we were back to having a conversation I thought after last season I was never going to have again on this podcast, and I was talking about shipping Julius out of town. And it turned out it really was just the ankle, and he bounced back from that in an incredible way. To play the best basketball of his career, the smartest basketball of his career. So where does this all leave the Knicks now? That's sort of the question of the hour. And it all comes down to, unfortunately for Knicks fans, the status of another injury, OG Anunoby. This team still has a very high ceiling with OG Anunoby in this lineup. I mean, him and Jalen Brunson are somewhere around a plus 40 net rating when it's those two on the floor without Julius Randle this season. That is, I don't need to tell anyone listening, that is extraordinary. That is one of the best 2-man combinations in the league. In Jalen, you have a top 10 offensive player in basketball. In Anunoby, you have a top 5 defensive player in basketball, and you have an excellent supporting cast. And that can still be, even without your all-star in Randle, a combo that I think, if in a world where Anunoby's 100%, Knicks could reach the Eastern Conference Finals. Do I think that is likely? Hell no. I think the first round series is going to be a bloodbath unless Anunoby is truly 100%. And that seems like a long shot. Now, having missed 10 games with elbow tendinopathy, an injury that generally takes at least 6 months to be 100%. And again, Anunoby is different because those projections are typically, as I noted on the pod on Tuesday, for people in their 40s to their 60s that are playing tennis 2-3 times a week, and not for one of the best athletes on earth. So is there an outside chance he's 100%? I'm not a doctor, but I'd guess so. Is there a chance that he's close to that and it's just a pain tolerance issue? Yeah. And maybe that doesn't affect him so much, but your margin for error just shrinks dramatically with no Randle. There's no other way to say it. Despite how good they've been with Anunoby, where I do think things get interesting for the Knicks, and this circles back to a podcast we've had with our buddy XJ about 2 weeks ago, where we talked about, all right, if Randle is out, what can the Knicks still learn from this season? And I think it is a golden opportunity to get an idea of, all right, what does Jalen Brunson with genuine 4-out spacing add up to in the postseason? And we got a bit of a preview of that last year. In the minutes he played with Quentin Grimes, the Knicks were excellent. Even against the Miami Heat, the Knicks were excellent. When they took that spacing off the floor, when they tried to play toilet bowl style offense with Josh Hart, RJ Barrett, and turn that Heat series into a 90s basketball series, the team, it was a disaster, right? And Josh Hart and RJ Barrett had two of the lowest net ratings on the team. As good as RJ was in last year's playoffs, and he was awesome in last year's playoffs. And guys, by the way, I see the comments. I'm gonna answer them next segment. We're gonna get into them a bit. They were not good when they did not have shooting on the floor. They were exceptionally good when they just had theoretical shooting on the floor. Quentin Grimes, 30% from the field, 24% from three last year in the playoffs, and yet the Knicks kick butt in his minutes. And that was because Jalen Brunson plus shooting plus defense is an extremely powerful formula, and one that allows the Knicks to punch pretty dramatically above the I'm sorry, guys, internet issue. Yeah, Jalen Brunson plus shooting is a formula that allows the Knicks to punch pretty dramatically above the weight. And Anunoby gives them that formula to the nth degree. And you have him, you have Dante, you have Hart, you have either Mitchell Robinson or Isaiah Hartenstein. That is a recipe for perhaps the best defense in the Eastern Conference, perhaps the best defense in the playoffs, period. And they were borderline that last year without Anunoby. So they can play at a really high level in the defensive end. What I'm looking at is, can the offense generate enough points? And that's an open question, despite the fact that they haven't had any issues in that in the regular season, even without Anunoby and Randle. Like I mentioned this the other day, but their offensive rating with Deuce McBride, Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, and Isaiah Hartenstein. So that is no Julius Randle, All-NBA guy. That is no OG Anunoby. 138 points per 100 possessions since March 1st in close to 150 minutes. A pretty substantial sample size. They've shown they can score in the regular season. Last year, they showed they could score in the regular season with ease, right? They were the third best offense in basketball. That didn't translate to the postseason in any meaningful way. And that was because without Julius Randle at 100%, they just did not have enough guys that could generate shots. And as you all know, I don't have to tell you guys, the playoffs is a different animal than the regular season. You get a chance to lock in on an opponent for 4 to 7 games. The extent of the scouting, which I think people underrate in a non-Knicks world, because Tom Thibodeau does an incredibly good job getting his team prepared for regular season games. And that's why you see the Knicks outperform their talent in the regular season. Why you saw the Bulls outperform their talent in the regular season. Why you saw the Timberwolves, to some extent, when Tom Thibodeau was there, outperform their talent in the regular season. They were the best prepared team in the NBA. In the playoffs, the gap between what the Knicks do in terms of preparation, which is borderline, like obviously Miami's incredible, like the Celtics are really good, a bunch of teams that are really good. But in the regular season is borderline second to none in the NBA. In the playoffs, that gap closes and closes dramatically. that becomes somewhat of a level playing field, almost regardless of which team you are playing. And when that happens, when defenders are cued in on tendencies, hey, Dante DiVincenzo likes to pump fake, take one dribble right, and then shoot from 26 feet away. Cover that right side. Hey, Josh Hart is not going to want to take threes in high leverage moments. Lock that into your mind. Leave him wide open. Let him fire away. Hey, Isaiah Hartenstein is going to try to throw this pass if you give a teammate of his an inch around the basket. Close that out. When that is locked into opponents' minds, and the thin margins, the thin gaps on which this Knicks offense is succeeding, squeezing just enough juice out of an orange that is this is a weird analogy, but slightly beaten up, but still pulpy, still full of goodness. Maybe that orange starts to rot a little because the margins are just that much thinner. And can Anunoby, with his shooting, make up for that gap? And the fact that you can double Jalen Brunson, but then is he spraying it out to DiVincenzo, who's one of the best shooters in basketball? Is he spraying it out to Anunoby, who's having a historic season as a corner three-point shooter? Is he spraying it out to Josh Hart, who at times this year has shown an ability to hit the three, and if not hit the three, can certainly attack a tilted defense and make some damage happen? To me, it puts a lot of weight, again, assuming Anunoby's healthy, which is a big freaking assumption, puts a lot of weight on Josh Hart and his ability to take and make threes. I've said at various points this year that is absolutely essential to the Knicks postseason hopes. It becomes quite a bit more so because Julius Randle obviously has a different level of gravity. Even if he's not a much better shooter than Hart, he's a much more willing shooter. And because of who he is, when he has the basketball in his hands, you cannot ignore him, even though he is not a great shooter. Hart, we've seen you could ignore to great effect in the playoffs. And then if the Knicks have to close games with Deuce instead of Hart, what does that do to their defense when they're a little bit small? We're going to get into all that, and we're going to continue talking about that, the Knicks postseason chances with and without Anunoby. And we're going to answer some of your questions next on Locked On Knicks. But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood is the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. Their offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info, this claim is as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC is a registered broker-dealer. All righty, guys, we are going to keep it rolling on Locked On Knicks. So I just talked about what does the Knicks postseason look like with OG Anunoby. Ultimately, I think they find a way to get out of the first round as long as they do not face the Miami Heat. I think that series, while Anunoby would make a substantial difference and there would basically be a better version of the team that took the Heat to 6 within a couple seconds of going to 7 games last year. I think Miami, with a fully healthy Jimmy Butler, with Terry Rozier, with Tyler Hero, even if it's kind of questionable whether he ultimately has a positive or negative effect on them, I think that would be really, really, really challenging for the Knicks. Sans Julius Randle. They play anyone else with a healthy Anunoby, I'm pretty confident that the Knicks can win that first round series. Against the Bucks, I would give the Knicks a puncher's chance with a healthy Anunoby, just because they have someone who can physically stick with Giannis and Anunoby. They have a pair of really high-level defensive centers in Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein to eat some fouls, to protect the rim, to switch out onto Dame. They have someone like Precious Achiuwa who gives them a little bit of a curveball, even if it would take away some size at the rim and create some issues maybe with Brook Lopez and all the shooting they have. That being said, a fully healthy version of the Bucks, that would be tough. Now, if the Knicks don't have Anunoby, which again is an open question, and it's also fair to wonder if Julius Randle getting hurt pushes the Knicks' hand to just shutting down OG, which would suck. I'm sure it's not what he wants. I'm sure it's not what this team wants. And frankly, after all the fight they've shown this year, the miles put on Josh Hart, put on Dante DiVincenzo, put on Deuce McBride, put on Jalen Brunson, for all that to end with, hey, we are just not going to bring back this guy who could possibly gut it out. That's a tough thing to tell your team. That's a tough thing to tell OG Anunoby. But if it means he's healthy next year, if it's best for his long-term future, if it creates some goodwill in contract negotiations with Anunoby and CAA, which there already should be since it is, again, Leon Rose's son holding that negotiation on Anunoby's behalf, maybe that's worth it at the end of the day. I don't know. That is beyond my capacity to answer. But this team, without OG, could very well lose in the first round. And that sucks to say after we've had hope for months that this team still had an outside shot at the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe a 1 in 100 short. I'm going to say like 1 in 15, 1 in 20 chance at the NBA Finals. To go to a team that, like, hey, we could very well lose in the first round. We might be exhausted. We might just not have the gas against a young Magic team or a Cavs team that is going to be ultra hungry to prove themselves and is just going to have a lot more talent than the Knicks if they don't have Anunoby or Randle or RJ Barrett or Emmanuel Quickley on the floor. Even Indiana, like, that's a tough series. Tyrese Halliburton, really freaking good. Pascal Siakam, really freaking good. Miles Turner, like, just a difficult team to guard with the spacing, the shooting they can get on the floor. Not great defensively, but do the Knicks have the offense to take advantage of it? Those are all questions we are going to continue to talk about. But for right now, that's scary. That's dicey. And the last thing I'll say, and I can think about where this news did not completely devastate me, is I've had it in my mind. The quotes we heard from Channing Frye on this injury, where he was saying, like, he essentially got told the same thing. Hey, if you come back and play through this, you could risk permanent damage to your shoulder. And he said, screw that. I'm playing anyways. We can go win a championship this year. And the Cavs did. That was 2016-17. They ultimately came back, beat the Warriors in 7 games. Frye was a big help for them throughout that playoff run. Key piece, ultimately worked out, right? He couldn't lift his shoulder past a certain point in his body. The rest of his career, he still cannot lift his shoulder past a certain point on his body. And for Julius, at age 29, smack dab in the middle of his prime, coming off the best first 44 games or so of his career, to risk that, even on a team with dark horse title aspirations, like, just not worth it at the end of the day. Even just from a human perspective, like, Kaiden's big. His son Kaiden's big. Like, he's gonna want to be picking him up for a few more years. It wasn't worth it. Like, it was not worth it, and that sucks to say. That sucks to hear, because we all, like, I invest a lot of hours in this team. You guys all invest a lot of time, blood, sweat, mental equity in this team, emotion into this team. And I think we could all sit here and say objectively, like, it's not worth permanent damage, not worth Julius Randle's career, whether that is on the Knicks, whether that's on another team. Like, it's just not worth it. And that sucks, but that's reality. All right, I'm going to quickly roll through some of the comments we got, and then we'll wrap this up. And Alex and I, following the Kings game, we'll have a bunch more thoughts on it. All right, we're going to start from the top. Dimitri says, my shoulder dislocated approximately 20, I don't know if he means 20 times or 20 years ago from hockey, had surgery, recovered in about 5 to 6 months. I think he means 20 times. Hasn't happened again since. Yeah, that's the good news, guys. Julius Randle projects to be 100% healthy for next season. Yeah, Julius Randle, she 100% healthy to start next season. So if he's on the Knicks, they bring in and he'll be back. They're going to be really good. ANKHRA999 says Julius always gets shut down the playoffs because he's so predictable. I don't think that's fair. He did It was fair in 2021, like that happened. But like, again, look who he had around him. Like, young second-year RJ Barrett, not ready for that stage. Young Emmanuel Quickly, barely played, totally not ready for that stage. Young Obi Toppin, totally not ready for that stage. Alfred Payton, not an NBA center. Mitchell Robinson, hurt. Nerlens Noel, not good enough. They were a 4 seed that had the talent of a team that, like, in 2024 would be a play-in team, and probably not one that ultimately reached the playoffs in a season like this year. Again, Julius shrunk. Like, he wasn't good. I'm not going to deny you what you saw, what you heard in that series. Last year, we kind of have to wipe off the board because he was, again, playing through just a completely bum ankle. And when he initially recovered from that ankle, like that start of that game 5, like he was killing Evan Mobley, who was, what was he, defensive player of the year last year, like runner up for defensive player of the year last year. I think he can be a good postseason player. Like, we still haven't seen it, and that's the shame in all this. My buddy Paul wants to know, I predicted this a few weeks ago. The lack of updates was a definite writing on the wall. No surprise here at all. Yep, totally fair to say. I was worried. I can't say I was sure because I want to, like, I put the quote up here. Like, we were talking about it with John Schmelk. We had quotes from S&Y. There was some internal concern regarding the idea that Randle hadn't yet been cleared for contact. As the Kings game, Randle still hasn't been cleared to take full contact. It's unclear if he's been cleared for contact in the ensuing days. 3 people I spoke to who are familiar with the situation expressed confidence that Randle would ultimately return to the court. That was a week and a half ago. There was still confidence, at least inside the Knicks organization. Like, this has not been a foregone conclusion for a long time. I think this was something that changed as he saw my mic when unplugged. This is something that changed as he saw these last 2 specialists. All right. Another question from ANKHRA999. OG was already damaged goods before he arrived from Toronto. That is not true. So just going to ignore that. Axis Oreo, can we get Malachi back? That would help right now. Senior brief. Nope, should not have put that up there. That involved a bad word, but yeah, it was probably dirty. Paul, fortunately, I have to agree. Don't think that's true. Steve Thomas, Knicks medical staff has blood on their hands. They completely misdiagnosed both Julius and OG. I don't think Julius was never misdiagnosed. He got surgery, and the reports have been pretty clear the entire time that it was sort of an open question whether he was going to come back. Like, people have successfully rehabbed from a separated shoulder before and came back and played through it and have been okay. But generally it's an injury that requires surgery at some point or another. And we were talking this pod, like, it could be a world where Julius played through it and then got surgery this offseason. Like, that was always a possibility. OG, possibly. I don't know. Maybe he was misdiagnosed. Darius, I actually think the ball moves better without Randle. I've never thought he was the answer. His body language is terrible. I don't know if the ball moves differently without him. Okay, just a big debate between A and KH and Darius the Great. Let's see if we have comments from anyone else. Darius the Great says, I'd trade Randle this summer during the draft, TBH. I should have kept Toppin and let him develop here, but Randle's not the answer. I can guarantee you Obi Toppin was not the answer either, as much as I love him. He's not Julius Randle. Eric Gonzalez, not surprised by this injury news. Sucks, though, but hopefully he's ready for the start of the regular season. Agree with you, Eric. His trade value might be down right now. That's fair, though. It should be 100% to start next year. As for what that trade value ultimately is, that's probably more of an offseason conversation on this podcast. I kind of wonder if there's some kind of sign and trade deal there for Paul George. That intrigued me a lot, just for the shooting element and the defense element that Paul George brings to the table. All right, guys. All of his teammates say he's a great locker room guy. Yep. Every single guy in this Knicks team loves Julius, and that has to say something. You saw RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly's reaction to him when they came back. Like, I think he was a big brother to a bunch of these dudes, and despite everything, and there have been some bad moments, especially at 21-22 season, just sucked with Julius. But on the whole, his teammates seem to love the guy, and that has to say something. And is ultimately more important than the opinion of anyone outside of this team. Final one from Nick Yak. We couldn't have gotten worse news after being told no other damage after multiple MRI. Can't believe they missed it. Their swelling went down a few weeks ago. Again, I don't think they missed anything, guys. I think it was just a case of, like, let's see if he can rehab this and get to a point where it's stable enough that he can play. It just never got there. They thought it could work. It was never a sure thing. It ultimately didn't. I don't think there were any bad actors in this situation. I think this was a case of trying to balance Julius's best interests and the best interests of his health with this Knicks team. And it just ultimately, it didn't work out. And that sucks. All right. On that somber note, guys, we are going to have a bunch more for you tonight after the Kings game. We're going to get Alex's thoughts on the injury. We'll have a recap of that game. So this is obviously the news of the day. The New York Knicks in a dream season, the ceiling of this team has shattered, and that is devastating. All right. On that happy note, we'll talk to you very, very soon on Locked On Knicks.